So Brian, welcome to Libertarian Home.
Thank you for having me.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, off the top of my head, was how much I enjoyed last Thursday, was it, when Anton Howes talked?
Yes.
It pleased me for about 5 or 6 different reasons, not least because I had asked him to talk at my place. You attended, and on the strength of that you invited him to do a more formal presentation with one of these things going.
Yes.
I felt, it's a nice feeling when you feel you've contributed to a good event, which this certainly was. I was also delighted to hear him again, because I realised to my horror after he'd spoken at my place that because I'd been sort of fussing and fretting about, had I got enough wine and were the chairs in the right places, all that drivel that you do when you're the host, I hadn't really listened properly to what he'd been saying, and I noticed you were in exactly the same state last Thursday, because there was some balls up with people in the room when you wanted to use it and so on, and you were in a bit of a state. So I imagine you might not have listened as carefully as you might have done. But last Thursday I was able to really listen to what he said, and I do find it absolutely fascinating what he was talking about, which was, I should perhaps explain, the idea that the industrial development of the human species didn't just happen because a bunch of very ordinary sort of people sort of started responding to a few economic incentives that changed a bit, and therefore which caused them to change their behaviour a bit. No, industrialism was a very self-conscious idea. It was a different way of thinking. And it didn't just happen because I don't know, they found coal in England, and they'd run out of timber, or because England's an island or something like that. It happened because people began to think about that sort of thing happening, and that was a good thing.
And it wasn't just a religious thing either. It wasn't just the case that they got into their heads that work was godly.
Well, it was mixed up with religion, but the idea of liberty first found expression one of the first ways in which it was expressed was to say that people had freedom to worship as they wanted to, in accordance with their own personal conscience, rather than, for example, taking it on trust what God had to say in the Bible from a clergy. Instead, people would print their own Bibles in their own local languages and study those Bibles themselves and make their own decisions about what right conduct consisted of. Well, that principle that you make your own decisions about things, of course, has applications in all sorts of other areas. Politics is the obvious one. That was the first big troublemaking impact of this sort of thinking. But it subsequently expressed itself in economic life. And that's what Anton Howes, I don't think I ever said his surname, was talking about last Thursday, and I found it very, very interesting.